everybody. Thank you so much for joining Team Awesomism podcast. And thank you, Brandon Hodde, for letting us use your amazing music. If you are a country music artist, a supporter, even if you're not, go listen to Brandon Hodde. He's amazing and he supports the Virtual Academy. So today I am super excited to have someone who I have met through social media and has become a friend. And he has his own podcast called Defining Moments. Please write that down right now, Defining Moments. He is so inspirational. I mean, this is the guy who looks at the little things in life and makes them positives, and we need more of that today. So when I asked Hoang if he would be on my podcast and he said, sure, I was super excited. So without me blabbering anymore, I'm going to introduce you to Hoang Lam, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk about his podcast and kind of his background, and then we'll go from there. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Lynn. Thank you so much. And thank you, Peyton, for setting this up. This is going to be awesome. My name is Hoang Lam. I'm the host of Defining Moments podcast. My wife, Margie Lam, she does the editing and everything else she does. Also, she co-hosts sometimes when she has the time to break away from work. But yeah, I am first generation American. My parents are immigrants. They fled communism from Vietnam in 1975. They were at sea for over 33 days, rescued by the United States military, landed in a refugee camp in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, sponsored by three couples from Guthrie, Oklahoma. My parents mowed yards, cleaned offices, did what they needed to do to make sure that my brother and I had food on the table and roof over our heads, and got into engineering, coached boys competitive soccer for a long time, and now I'm the CEO of CMM Financial Services. So yeah, that's me in a quick nutshell. We can go in a deeper dive later, but yeah, Lynn, that's me.
I love it. I literally got goosebumps when you talked about your parents. When my children were little, my daughter, our neighbors were from Cuba. And we were watching something on TV, and her best friend at the time's parents had escaped China and come over here. And she was watching something on TV where someone had hid in the bottom of an airplane. And she said, oh, mommy, she was little. And she said, oh, mommy, I feel so bad for those people. We have to pray for them. She said, can you imagine? And I looked at her and I said, you realize Carlos came over on an inner tube from Cuba. And your friend Kathleen's parents came over, basically, escaped through a different way from China. And her eyes got as big as saucers. And she said, wow, Mom, really? And I said, yeah, sometimes we Americans tend to forget that there are people who did whatever they had to do to get here because they were being so persecuted in their own countries or were living under such horrendous, conditions. And she went and then talked to Carlos about that. And I remember he came to me and he said, she was so full of questions. He thought that was, and then she said to me, well, how did, my great-grandparents, because my grandparents came from the Netherlands. And I said, well, no, they came over by a boat and, and I explained the situation. She was like, oh, and it was kind of funny because I think at that young age, because I homeschooled, so we used it as a part of the homeschooling, right? I think it opened something in her to be a more outside of her comfort zone person. And when she was an adult, this was like 12 years ago, she came to me and said, she was backpacking everywhere around the world as soon as she got out of high school. But she came to me and said, I want to go live in Nepal for 3 months and I want to work in an orphanage. They don't pay me. It's all volunteer, so I have to raise the money, but I want to go to Nepal. And she did. And I said to her, Taya, because I had been to Yemen and I saw extreme poverty, which Americans just don't see. And this is why I want to take Americans when they get so uppity and stressed out because they don't get pickles on their hamburger and drop them into some of these other countries. You know what I mean? And And I saw these children walking around that had deformities in Yemen, and they had no health care to take care of them. And I said to her, Taya, you're going to see poverty, and it's going to hurt your heart. You're going to see children. It's going to hurt your heart. You cannot adopt them all. You have to take the mentality of, if you're with them for 3 months, you love them. You show them compassion and kindness. You teach them everything you can so that during that 3 months, after you leave, the next 3 years, they can pull that inner strength out. Right. And she said, I will. And she said, Mom, I'm not going to try to adopt them all. She was barely there. She was calling me crying, Mom, you don't understand. She wanted to adopt them all, which is exactly what I knew was going to happen. And I've always believed in my heart that her understanding, and all my kids are like that, all 4 of my children, but I always believe in my heart that she started, understanding it because she saw something. And I wish more Americans would go and speak to people like you, like your parents, different parents who have risked everything to come here. Yeah. Because I think we would stop some of this. I'm entitled, I'm privileged, and I better have. And yeah. And this is something that I bang the drum on every day as far as autism. Autistic adults are being left behind. They have a 75 to 85% unemployment rate. That angers me so much, okay? And I'm like, folks, wake up. We need to do something about this. That's why Peyton and I started the Virtual Academy, to help them with every kind of skill set they can humanly have, including fun skills and calming, self-care. And I think those are the kind of issues that will, by bringing them forward, will step past the awareness of autism and go to the acceptance. And I also think that when autistic adults can relate to different stories from different people and hurdles that they've overcome, I think they start getting a more positive mindset rather than, that's why we call it Awesomism. Just like I love your hashtag of undefeated. You're right. We need to take that mentality. We're not going to be defeated. We're not going to let them step in and tell us how to live and what we can do and can't do. Okay. And that's what your parents escaped from. And, if we teach autistic adults, you are undefeated and you have awesomism because God made you that awesome one. Yeah. It opens doors.
Love it.
Thanks.
That's awesome, and you're right, and it's unfortunate that the unemployment rate for autistic adults are that high. I'm surprised, and I want to say I'm surprised, but at the same time, I don't know how surprised I should be, because I feel like there's so much money going around to different countries from the United States that why can't we literally take care of our own? We're in this big deficit of cash flow, but yet there seems to be an absorbent amount of money going to different countries. So that I'm curious to know the super details into that.
Well, one of the articles I was reading the other day made me I had to stop reading it because I had tears, literally tears. It said, the higher the functioning, sometimes the more unemployment. And the reason for that is because if they have a higher skill set, but they still have, they may have meltdowns, or they may have the stress or the severe anxiety, or, different things like this, or just different, and it's a spectrum. So they're all very different. But at the same time, some of these companies are like, well, it's okay if you go bag groceries. Now, understand, I love every single company that hires them. Okay, and goes out there and says, bag groceries. Okay, maybe someone on the spectrum can only bag groceries. That's great. But maybe they can become a manager. And so sometimes when they're higher functioning, they want to go higher, and some of the companies limit them. This is part of the reason why we're doing what we can with the Academy to bring up acceptance. I say this in every podcast and I say it every time I talk. If we only talk about awareness, and I use the example of if I'm sitting at my desk and I see an elderly person on their bicycle fall and get severely injured, I'm now aware they're injured. But if I don't accept that they're injured and then actively get up to go help them on their bike, what good is it doing for them? Nothing. Right. I'm just sitting at my desk watching them be injured. I may be saving their life if I accept and actively. So this is why with the Academy, we set the Academy up to not only spread acceptance, but to allow parents and autistic adults to be more in control of their situation, to learn more life skills, social skills, soft skills, hard skills, business skills, et cetera, so that they can go get the jobs. And we focus a lot on working with small businesses because a lot of times, like if, say, a company has 10 employees and they really need somebody to just come in and do data input. And everybody else is like, I'm not going to sit there and put all that into a computer every day. We can do it technology wise, but you can bring that person in, an autistic adult, and they then all of a sudden you start seeing they have all these other skill sets. And they start doing it because there's only 10 of you in the office, and they start realizing that they're really good at helping Mary with her job, or they don't mind when Sue is sick to fill in for Sue because they've been watching Sue and self-learning. Sometimes when they're in these big corporations, they're just a name and a number. Whereas when they're in a smaller business, the smaller business goes, and then that smaller business turns around and says, you know what? My wife works at such and such. I'm going to tell them about hiring an autistic adult. And that's how we cut into the 75, 85%. And if they come to us, the smaller businesses, which is another thing that we beg people to do with the Academy, is come to us and say, we could really use help with this skill set. Guess what? We'll do a class and we'll help them with that. And you can send potential employees and your employees so that they can understand autism better to the virtual academy. And it's a win-win because you may not have the ability or the time to train them for 6 weeks. We step in and help you with that.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great point. So I think you'll be excited to hear about this. I connected with a high school teacher here about 5-6 months ago, and he teaches a class for kids with different abilities. And this summer, I'm going to have 2 of them intern here at CMM Financial to do data entry, to understand paperwork, to understand the office and team environment, so they can take those lessons into their own lives and to share with others. So I think you'll be excited about that. It's pretty. I'm excited. We're excited.
I'm super excited. I hope this podcast goes to 1 million people because I hope that they get inspired to do the same. See, this is exactly where it starts. And, by you doing that, who knows how many other companies will step up?
Yeah. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to it just because we're a tight-knit group here and we have a lot of fun. We get through these taxes and we interact with the clients a lot. And it's always great to get a different perspective from someone else's lens on what we do every day. And then how can we help you become better? And you're going to help us become better. And that's going to be 100% true. So yeah, totally excited.
You should be. I didn't even know this. Here, how funny is this? I literally used the example of data entry, having no idea that that's what you're doing. I mean, that wasn't a setup for you. I'm just my love of you and support of you is because you're a teammate and you were one of the very first to support the Academy, which we love and are so grateful for. But also I love your perspective on life. Like I've said this to you before, and I'm going to say it in public now where people can hear, and it's harder for you to say no. I would love to have you do an inspiration, some videos to put on the Academy for you. We can call it Defining Moments. We'll link for your podcast, the hashtag undefeated, because autistic adults need to understand There are a lot of us out there in the world who support them. They just don't always know how to find us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're bringing 2 interns in.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I'll when that time happens, I'll make sure I do videos with them with their, of course, consent and their parents' consent, and we'll shoot them out because it's so important. And if you think about it, that is the true definition of diversity and inclusion, right? Because there's way too many times they talk about diversity as like, oh, the skin, female, male, whatever they want to call it, and same with the inclusion thing. But the point is, you don't have to use such words as inclusive or diversity, because if you have to do that, then you're saying we actually aren't. We
Right.
actually are without even saying that. So it's common sense to me.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I got really hammered because one day I put a story out on Instagram and I said, you know, everybody that's on here talking about inclusion, how about including autistic adults? And people all up in their feelings at me. And then I got the other side that was like, yeah. And it was funny because the crowd that was going to me was the ones who had children who were autistic or were autistic, you know? And I'm like, okay, what does that tell you? It tells you they feel they're being left behind and you're not listening.
Right. Absolutely right. And that's why I feel like people aren't really actively listening. They have a preset mindset, and they're just, when they hear that word, they're going to be like, oh, Wong's Asian. No, actually, that has nothing to do with Wong being here. It has everything to do with the merit system that his parents put in, and then I had to find a way as well to get to where I am today. And it wasn't given to me. It has nothing to do with my race. The only privilege you and I really share is that we live in America, and that's one of the greatest countries in the world. So that's a privilege that you and I share.
I completely agree. And, you know, this is also why, you know, I know some people get really frustrated with me because I'm always homeschool. But I homeschooled my children, and I was homeschooling when people were stopping me, not exaggerating, on the street telling me they were going to call the police on me because I was truant with my children. And I would say the same thing every time. Please, I hope you do, because this will give me an opportunity, you know, a bully pulpit to speak about it. Okay. Yeah. And, you know, people would say, well, you were privileged to be able to homeschool your children. And I always had the same attitude. Maybe from a financial standpoint, that was maybe, and that's stretching it, but where the privilege was, it privilege that I never really had time away from my children, that I was taking on the burden and stress level of making sure that when they got to graduate high school, that they were going to be able to go to college if they so chose, that I was teaching them life skills, that I was making sure that they had social interaction. I wasn't giving that to somebody else. I was making sure that was happening for them. And, you know, people then get all up in their feelings when I say that, but this is how I feel in relativity to the autism world too. You know, please, I have parents coming to me who are 70 and 80 years old saying, I don't know who's going to take care of my 50-year-old autistic adult daughter when I'm gone. And I'm like, that's why the Academy was formed, because we're trying to help her not regress, but progress by stimulating her, teaching her new in a stressful environment, in a casual environment. By, if she wants to watch the same video 28 times and loop it, she can. If she wants to stop and practice something, because one of the things that I found was that if you do live, and I'm not against live, we're going to have live classes, but if you're teaching them how to cook and they mess up, then they just completely don't do it. We want them to be able to go backwards, watch it again, and learn it. And I think we have thrown this word privilege around way too much, and we're way too, quick to judge everyone. And, it's kind of the same thing. One of the examples was, we were in Costco one day and there was a young couple with their little boy, and I could tell he was autistic, and he had a meltdown and he started crying and he started throwing himself on the floor. And I walked over to the parents, and I was with my oldest son and my youngest son. And I said, is he autistic? And they said, yes. And they, they were frazzled and they had tears and everybody's watching them and looking at them, right? And I said, my son is autistic. That's, I get this. So they were trying, and parents, other people were standing around and having opinions. Well, he just needs him, because everybody has an opinion. Okay. And they all think that their opinions are facts, which is a real irritation to me. And so I turned around and I walked away, and I heard like 3 different couples. And I walked over to them. I said, hey, how are you? Just wanted to tell you I'm a full-time autism activist. And I'm also an autism parent, and I have a podcast. And since you have the answers of how to deal with autism, would you be willing to come on my podcast? So there are millions of autism parents who would love to have the knowledge you have. They all walked away. And I thought to myself, yeah, you're judging that parent not knowing the situation. Okay. Yeah. And this is something that autistic adults will tell you they feel judged. And that bothers me. That really bothers me. And that's why we started this podcast, because we wanted to take everyday relatability. And one of the things you just said, I love, you said people assume because I'm Asian that I A, B, or C, right? This is the same thing autistics say. They assume because I'm autistic, I'm automatically Rain Man, or I'm this, or I'm that. And see how much more commonality we have. And that's where we have to start. And that's why things like your podcast, Defining Moments, are beautiful. Because I think if people get those defining moments, that can change their life, their attitude, their acceptance, their activism. We'll be a better country. We'll be a better group of people. We'll do better. We'll be better for the right reasons, not because, oh, look at me, I look good.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple things as I was listening to your story that really pop out. Number one is about the cooking, and if you're missing up on live TV, it's okay. You can watch it over. How do you get better? When I coached boys competitive soccer, these young men would make mistakes on the field, and they'd automatically look at me, and I would just, do the keep your head up. And a few of them were like, I thought you'd pull me, Wong. And I was like, why would I pull you for a mistake? Because the thing to me is, it's how you recover that really actually defines your character, that will help you become better. And so if you can learn from your mistakes, then the better off you're going to be, the better off the team's going to be, the better off your future is going to be, right? And that's the truth. It's just like history. If you look back in history, the 1800s or early 1900s, and you studied that and you understood it, even at a broad sense, you would say that in 2023, we are better off as Americans, as in America, than we've ever been, right? So that's so important about understanding your mistakes, learning from them. It's so important about history, learning from it, and being better off. The other one you talk about, Costco, is hats off to you, Lynn, because that's a leadership moment. A lot of people, and I say that, a lot of people, I would say 80%, 85% would not have done what you've done. That's a leadership moment that very few would actually do. And I applaud you for that. It gives me chills telling you that, because it's so awesome. So well done to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, because, I have found that we have become a society of, it's so easy to go, well, here's your faults, because we don't want to talk about our own, and the judgmental behavior, because, I was a single parent when Peyton was young, a single mom of 4 kids, and I was homeschooling and working and doing everything. And I had people around me, chirp, 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 you're not doing this, you're not doing that, and you're this and you're that. And they don't understand how much it wore on me, and that's why I love your Undefeated so much, because I would get defeated. And I wish I had been able to, at the time, hear some of the things that you put out, see some of the things you put out, because it's true. And that's my passion for autistic adults. You're not defeated. You're undefeated. You have an ability. And guess what? I don't care what ability you have or don't have. You have abilities. And, you were talking about, and I like this. I've never seen that before. I like that. Head up. Keep your head up. My dad always used to tell me, look, it's not a mistake if you learn from it. It's a life's lesson. And when
Mm,
you learn from it, it's a life lesson. And I would make mistakes when I was little and I'd be like, oh, Dad, you're going to be so mad at me. And my dad's attitude always was, no, if you do it again, then there's going to be repercussions. Okay. But you need to learn from this. And I used to do that with my kids too. I tried and that's what I want autistic adults to learn too. And that's something we do with the Academy is, hey, look, at the end of the day, we all make mistakes. We all have negatives. We all do things wrong. But guess what? When you learn from them, you then will get stronger. You will be less stressed, less anxiety, and the more you'll be able to move forward. And
yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
and that's why like your podcast and things like the hashtag, I just absolutely love that hashtag. As a matter of fact, while I'm sitting here, I'm not kidding. I legitimately feel like starting a class on the Virtual Academy called Undefeated and start
Do
putting
it.
videos of undefeated moments in people's lives.
Do it. Do it. Just thinking of this on the fly, my wife and I should come up with shirts that has like autism and hashtag undefeated. I think we should do that and then send you guys some and
That would
help
be
promote.
awesome.
Let's
Yeah,
do
we would
that.
love that. We would
I'll talk to
love
my
that.
wife. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll after this we'll talk about shirt sizes and things like that and where to ship them.
Perfect.
But
Yeah, I love that so much because that's why it's awesomism. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've had people say to me, "Oh, I thought you did stuff in autism." I do. Why is it called awesomism? And then you always have the negative Nellies. I hate saying that because my grandmother's name was Nellie, but the negative Nellies that'll come up to me. Well, autism isn't all awesome, and I'm like, you're right. It's not. There are negatives to it, but if you're going to focus on the negatives, you're going to only harbor the negative, and you're just going to project the negative, and you're going to live in the negative. If you look at the positive side to it, guess what? You're going to be awesome.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I have always told Peyton, God made you, the numbers when he was young was 1 of 67. And I would always say to him, God made you that awesome one. You're the 1 of 67 he chose to make awesome. The rest of us are the
yeah,
same. And I wanted him to hear that because he knew he was different than his siblings. He knew his life path was going to be different than his siblings. But he also knew that what he put his head to, he was going to do awesome at it.
I
And
love it.
so, and a lot of times with autistic adults, it's the little things. Let's applaud them. And that's
Yeah,
why I love the undefeated, because you know what? A broken box of crayons still colors, and autistic adults need to learn that.
yeah. No, that's so true.
I heard
So
something on TV the other night, and I only watch classic TV or sports because I just can't take all the hate and anger getting pushed. And so we were watching Designing Women, and Anthony, who's was the only black character on there, said his grandmother threw a box of crayons on a table one day and said, see how all these crayons are all different color and they all live together and they all do the same thing, and together they make beautiful art when you use all the different colors. And it really gave me chills and brought me to tears because I thought, boy, do we need that lesson in America right now. And
yeah,
boy, and the ones that are considered broken, which they're not, but like special needs adults, guess what? They color every bit as good as that brand new crayon. So
mm,
let's start looking at life that way. Stop looking at it as what divides us. Let's look at what unites us.
yeah. No, I love it. I love your passion and enthusiasm because we've been following each other for at least 3 years now,
Yeah.
and we talk and we text and you actually do have the undefeated mentality and the attitude. You don't play the victim card. And it reminds me of my parents on their journey because they left Vietnam to flee communism with no English, no money, nothing. They just got on a boat, a fishing boat, and they made it. You talk about the homeschooling, which is an interesting topic here in Oklahoma because we talk about a school choice. And I'll brag on my parents because my parents were ahead of that curve back in the early 90s when my mom and dad didn't like the school system we were in. So my mom got a job as assembly line worker and saved up enough money and moved us to a different school district. And so we went to a different school district and finished school there. So instead of playing the victim, woe's me, this school system's horrible, it's broke, it's jank, which it could be. So instead of sitting there talking about it, they did something about it.
Yes.
They got a job and saved up money, and we moved to a different school district. So that's why when I start to hear the woes me, the victimhood mentality, it really starts to grate me a little bit, because you live in the greatest country with amazing opportunities to become awesome, and you choose not to be awesome, and that's your own fault.
I agree. And you know, do we have problems? Of course we have problems. Yeah. Do we have things we have to fix? 1,000,000%. But this mentality of, and I love the saying is, and I've said this for years, and people always look at me because they've not heard it this way. So I don't, I'm not sure why more people don't say it, but it's, be careful painting with a broad brush. You might just paint yourself. And it's true. Yeah. So when you do this, oh, it's so awful, and oh, all these people, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. You're going to have that victim. You're then, well, I'm defeated. You know what I mean? I can't make it work. When you get up in the morning and you say, okay, are things wrong? Yes. But at the same time, then here's the thing. Stop pointing it out and do something. Try to fix it. You may not be able to fix the solution. Maybe only be able to fix it for your street, on the street you live on. If you have someone who's a complete jerk to other people for whatever reason, that you change their life that way. And I told this story before in a different podcast, and I tell it a lot. When I was in Yemen, we were standing, and this little minivan pulled up, and it was a mom with our little kids, right? And the mom had on her, abaya and everything. And they could tell we were Americans, because in Yemen, we didn't have to wear an abaya. We just had to dress, nice. Like, more, whatever you call it. And anyway, and they were all looking at me, and they were fascinated with my hair, because I have really big hair. I do. My hair is always really, especially sticks out unless I straighten it. And I didn't have a straightener. So my hair was like this, and they were all staring at me. And I went like this to them. And they all smiled, and they were saying things to their mom, and their mom smiled at me. And I thought, if they go home tonight and think there was an American who didn't look at them as a horrible person, I now put one check mark to positivity in their life.
Yep.
Do they have it rough? Yes. Was it tough for a lot of them? Has some evil come out of that toughness there? Yes. But it is far and few between. And there are so many people who get up every morning, just like we do, feed their children, love their children, kiss their spouse goodbye, go to work, and do what they have to do. And when we start focusing on the positives and we work to fix the negatives, not complain, it'll make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm serious. I really want to have a class called Undefeated, because I want those moments, and I want people to start sharing their moment of when they were undefeated. My dad would be proud of me, because my dad used to do this thing. Because I'm such a passionate person and a chatty Cathy, I'm a complainer. So like, I would be angry about something. I come stomping out in the family room and complain to my dad. And he would always be sitting in his chair, and he'd be looking at me, and he wouldn't say anything. And he did. This happened multiple times. You think I would have learned it, but I didn't. And I would say, aren't you going to say something? And he'd say, no, because all you're doing is complaining. I didn't hear one solution. I know. And then I'd be like, well, that's not fair. And he'd be like, give me a solution, and we have a talking point, a place to start, And he'd say, otherwise, all you're doing, I'm just letting you vent. I'm just letting you talk. I'm just letting you, rant and rave. But your rant and raving isn't fixing anything. Give me a solution, and we've got a starting point. May not be a good solution. Let's go. And it's so funny, because I did that to my kids, and they get so mad, just like I did. But you know what? It puts the mindset in your head of, instead of saying, I don't like this, I might work to fix this or support a group. And not everybody is led or has the right, personality or whatever to go out and do some of the changes or have a podcast or whatever. Okay. But that's where they step up. And if you can't financially support, like, we have the $40 teammates annual thing. If you can't do the $40 annual teammates, guess what? Send us videos for the virtual academy. Retweet us, put it out, share it with your email list. All of those things mean everything to us.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 20 things on the website of ways you can help us. And, if people would help instead of complain, we'd have a much better world.
Yeah, well, I feel like maybe it's easier for people to complain instead of helping out because it takes the energy and time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I also think that some people like to complain because I think they're more about the attention than about the solution,
Mm.
And that's kind of almost what my dad was saying to me in a nice way. Like, well, you're just in here looking for attention. You want me to give you attention about what you're angry. And guess what? He wasn't wrong. Okay. I mean, I wanted my dad to be like, oh, honey, it'll be okay. But he wasn't. He was like, no, get a solution.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's my mindset too. Is that you can complain all you want, and you may not like the way I do things, and that's fine too. However, what's your solution to doing it? Maybe we can collaborate and make it better.
Exactly. That's why we are definitely going to talk offline and do the undefeated class. I love this. And it's going to be totally inspired by you. And the first thing that's going in it is this podcast. Poor Peyton, he's sitting in the room because in case anything ever goes wrong, he's my little tech genius. So
Yeah.
if he, he's looking at me like, oh, great, now I get to do another class.
Well, Peyton, I mean, if you're good, that's why you get the attention. Because if you weren't good, then mom wouldn't be, or no one would be like, we don't need that. I mean, if you're good, and let's take it as a compliment. And we're going to dominate and be undefeated.
Yep. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we will be talking a lot because, like I said, I have so many new ideas to now for the Academy and to come up with you. And I love it. And I really do thank you a lot. It really means a lot. And I love it. I love that you support us. I love that you're there for us. And, like I said, I love your defining moments podcast. I love that this undefeated I don't know why, but today I guess I needed it more than I've ever needed it because we have so much swirling around us with the move and everything. Mm-hmm. And it just really hit me right today. And I hope that this podcast hits a lot of people right. And if you want to support our mission, please follow us on all social media and also join our teammates club. It's only $40 for the whole year. There's lots of perks to it. And please, please, please support Hoang and listen to his Defining Moments podcast because the positivity he puts out there, it will make your day. I mean, we all need that. And I love it. I mean, there's days I will admit, I literally seek out your tweets because I'm having a bad day. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to get my dose of positivity.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Okay. Look forward to it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.